The couple who run Pink News, the world's largest LGBT news website, have been accused by staff of a number of incidents of sexual misconduct.
A woke media outlet that smeared me years ago is now imploding with scandal, and their tears are so delicious. We're going to talk about the drama inside Pink News, one of the craziest LGBT media outlets out there, and so much more. In today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across the media, across our politics, and across the internet, all from an independent perspective. Like I mentioned, today we've got to check in with the downfall of one of the furthest left and most toxic media outlets out there, Pink News, the UK website that boasts about being the largest LGBT news outlet in the UK and maybe even the world. You may remember Pink News from such legendary pieces of journalism like London Aquarium's gender-neutral penguin just predicted Jeremy Corbyn will win the election. He did not. And I remember them from a time several years ago when they wrote a bizarre hit piece about me that included the least flattering photo of me I have ever seen. I mean, come on. You have to have tried to find a screen grab of me that bad. That cannot be by accident. I know that I needed a better haircut and am not some absolute 10, but I did look better than that even years ago, and I think they did that on purpose. Setting aside the fact that the thing they attacked me for in this article, titled Gay Right-Winger Bizarrely Rants That Queer People Are Using Coronavirus to, quote, fuel fake victimhood, I was absolutely correct about. Basically, all the LGBT activist organizations were putting out statements about how coronavirus was disproportionately harming LGBT people, and I pointed out that it's not. A virus doesn't care about your sexuality or your gender. It's just that it hurt people disproportionately who smoked cigarettes because that weakened your systems and left you more vulnerable. And LGBT people were disproportionately more likely to smoke cigarettes than non-LGBT people. So I pointed out that there was no real LGBT victimhood here. It was more of a statistical quirk or coincidence than anything else, for which Pink News attacked me and did me dirty.
Brother,
Now, while I don't hold grudges in cases where people apologize or some sort of bad blood is resolved, I do keep receipts when people are unrepentant in their wrongdoing. So I am going to take a little bit of joy in the downfall of Pink News that we're going to document today. The two gay men that run the company, Benjamin Cohen and his husband, Anthony James, are being accused of widespread sexual misconduct and even misogyny as part of a deep investigation by the BBC, where they spoke to more than 30 current and former members of staff. Here's more from the BBC on this story.
Did they have enough mental faculty to consent, do you think?
No, absolutely not. They weren't capable of consenting to what had happened to them.
The couple who run Pink News, the world's largest LGBT news website, have been accused by staff of a number of incidents of sexual misconduct. Staff say they saw Anthony James, director at the company and husband of the site's founder, kiss and touch a junior colleague, who they say appeared too drunk to consent.
There was a lot of alcohol that night, like so much. Anthony was just forcing himself on somebody who wasn't able to make that decision for themselves because of how intoxicated they were. The person who was doing it was the COO of the company, and it was a junior member of staff, so I can't think of anything more inappropriate.
Other staff voiced concerns about Mr. Cohen.
I have direct experience with it from a Christmas party we had. When I was just stood talking to my group of friends, and Ben ran past me and thought it would be appropriate to smack me on the bum, which is like, I wouldn't have even found that funny if like a team member had done it, let alone the CEO. I think I just like shut down for a minute. I just didn't even know what to say. I was in shock.
More than 30 current and former members of staff told me about a culture of heavy drinking, which they claim led to instances when company founder Benjamin Cohen and his husband behaved inappropriately towards younger male employees. The BBC was informed that Mr. Cohen and Dr. James were not able to provide a statement at this time, but we understand that their position is that the allegations made against them are false.
It's always the ones you least suspect. Oh, Wait, I just find this story hilarious because Pink News, the outlet these two run, is the most toxic, woke scold news outlet, constantly calling everybody some form of bigot, racist, sexist, homophobe, misogynist, transphobe, whatever, blah, 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 throwing around these terms like candy on Halloween, constantly putting themselves on a social justice pedestal as if they're these heroic saviors, and yet the people who were running it were degenerates the whole time, allegedly. This is my shocked face. You see this happen a lot, actually, where some hyper-woke person or institution gets exposed for actually being deeply problematic in its own right, and I almost start to wonder whether the accusations and the smearing is almost a defense mechanism, kind of a projection of sorts, where they're constantly casting aspersions on everyone else and trying to position themselves as the good guys, in part because they know they're not. They know that they themselves are deeply suspect and problematic, but hope that they can weaponize the language of bigotry to discredit their critics and scare people from speaking out against them. So, yeah, to me, it just kind of goes without saying that it's not okay as the boss of a company to hit on your underlings, to especially try to make out with them while they're drunk, allegedly, or to try to hit them on their butts. Like, this is basic, not okay, inappropriate sexual harassment behavior if these allegations are true. And again, BBC spoke to 30 current and former employees for this story. It's also not okay to ask your female staffers to be your surrogate, which is also apparently something they allegedly did. The BBC reports some staff members also said they had witnessed what they call misogynistic behavior. Several people said that on occasions, young female members of staff had been asked to act as a surrogate for Mr. Cohen and Dr. James. They say that often the request was delivered as a joke, but that it had made people feel awkward and uncomfortable. One anonymous staff member called it creepy and sleazy, while another called it part and parcel of how misogynistic Pink News was. A spokesperson for the National Union of Journalists said it has reached out to its members following the deeply disturbing allegations, which they say paint a picture of a dysfunctional and wholly unacceptable workplace environment. Yeah, you think? And I'll say this, look, set aside your feelings about surrogacy. I know people have complicated feelings about it. That is not an appropriate thing to ask your underlings at work. One, keep your personal life separate. And with what we've heard about these guys, thank God they don't have any kids, as far as I can tell at least. And two, it's really, whenever that is happening, it needs to be 100% consensual and fully mutually agreed upon. And when you're in a position of power over a young woman, trying to use that relationship dynamic to get them to do something like that for you is creepy and is wrong. Anyway, you guys will have to let me know what you think of this scandal, but I can't say I'm surprised, honestly, because this is a pattern I've observed where the most woke and outspoken allies and advocates are actually often deeply problematic themselves behind the scenes, and I can't help but enjoy this and take a little bit of satisfaction in the deliciousness of their tears, as the downfall of these two is so richly deserved, because I only showed you a couple headlines, but guys, I've followed LGBT media for years, and Pink News is uniquely toxic, hostile, and inaccurate at times with its bad faith coverage and its divisive, extreme nonsense. So as far as I'm concerned, their downfall is a good thing. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And do remember to hit that like button while you're at it, and make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slug slugs.
Today, this queer TikToker is going to explain to us how identities and words don't actually have to mean anything, and it's all okay and fine.
Identities like lesbian, gay, trans, non-binary, queer are not sets of rules for us to follow in order to be valid in our queerness.
I would love to know what our queerness is supposed to mean. And this dude's haircut is gagging me. Anyway.
They are definitions that are useful for us to communicate with one another, and more often with cis people with non-queer people with straight people about our identities and our experiences.
Honestly, I think at this point, most cis people want y'all to communicate about your identities less, not more.
Yes, they have definitions. Those definitions are not limits.
Hold up. Isn't that literally what a definition is, though? If your definition of something is not a limit, then something that isn't within this definition can be it, and therefore that's not the definition. If the definition of a YouTuber is somebody who uploads YouTube videos, but somebody who doesn't upload YouTube videos at all could also be a YouTuber because it's not a limit, then that's not the definition, because the word doesn't mean that. Like, am I the crazy one here? Am I the one who hit the crack pipe too many times? Because I feel like I'm going insane.
They're suggestions. Trans-masc lesbians absolutely exist. Trans-feminine lesbians absolutely exist.
Trans-masc lesbians exist. So somebody who's transitioning to be masculine, to be a man, can also be a lesbian. No, actually. Unless you want to completely erase what a lesbian is, which doesn't actually seem very progressive or woke of you, sir, but is something that these types have been doing for some time now.
It's not your job to police other people's ways of defining themselves and communicating those definitions to other people.
Well, it kind of is when those definitions impact me. So, for example, you want to destroy the definition of what it means to be a gay man, but of course, my life and my family relies on the definition that we've established that has been societally accepted of what it means to be a gay man. So if you destroy that definition, you undermine that progress. So yeah, it actually kind of is my business to police that and correct that and set your delulu straight, ironically. But also, you're expecting people to affirm and embrace your definitions and self-identity all the time. If you were just defining it truly for yourself, I wouldn't care so much. But because you're expecting everyone else to embrace it, they do actually get to question how you're defining it or how you're setting it up or the thing you're forcing them to accept, or at least trying to. That is valid then for them to question it because you've made it about them too. You played yourself here.
Once you start treating those definitions as limits, I'd argue you're just deciding how much discrimination you're okay with them subjecting us to.
I'm gonna be so honest with y'all. This video is making me want to say a slur. And when are we gonna be real about the fact that not all discrimination is bad? We discriminate all the time. It just means to treat people differently based on something. Some things it's okay to discriminate against people for. For example, if somebody is a thief, I don't want them in my store. If somebody is a cheater, I don't want to date them. Those are all forms of discrimination. Then, of course, there are forms of discrimination that pretty much all good people agree are wrong, like discriminating against somebody because they're black, because it's something they can't control and didn't choose and shouldn't have any moral weight attached to it. So what we're deciding as a society is which forms of discrimination are okay and which ones are not. So yes, we do think it's okay to treat you differently because of something like being non-binary or queer, which are political ideologies, not inherent characteristics. While we do think it's wrong to discriminate against somebody for being black or gay, because those are immutable demographic traits. This isn't the own that you think it is, my dude. Or my they, them, I guess.
And that's a losing battle for all of us. Maybe instead of reaching for judgment and exclusion, you could reach for curiosity and care.
I mean, I am curious. I'm curious about your arguments and why your math isn't mathing. But now you want me to be curious, but also not to question you. Which is it? And I'm sorry, but when y'all, the Q plus of the Wi-Fi password movement, are dragging down the community like the freaking iceberg that hit the Titanic, we are going to fight and push back on you and question you because we don't want to see our own rights and acceptance jeopardized, which is what your extremism and incoherence has done in recent years. So sorry, not sorry.
And then our communities would grow closer together instead of playing a constant game of identity among us. It's like in being shamed all through our upbringings for these different behaviors, We internalize that there is something shameful about gender or sexuality, and somebody's gotta take the fall.
Is our man's here saying there's nothing shameful about any forms of gender or any forms of sexuality? Because I can think of a few that are shameful and are bad. The argument was that there's nothing wrong with a man loving a man and that some people just come out that way and it can't be changed, so let them live their best lives. It wasn't that we all need to accept all and any sexual practices ever. And if you're suggesting otherwise, a hard drive check might be in order. And again, maybe this will get me in trouble, some forms of gender should be shamed. If you identify as a freaking dog or a cat, yeah, you should be shamed. If you identify as non-binary, that's not real and it's not valid. So no, we're not on the same page about this. If you and your movement want to declare all forms of gender and all forms of sexuality okay, no. That's not what we signed up for. We signed up for arguing that more than just the traditional are acceptable and okay. Not that everything is. And if you try to argue that everything is, you're going to endanger our entire movement and acceptance, which, then again, that's what you're already doing.
This is your chance to not be policed and not have to police anybody in order to feel bigger or better or more correct in existing than them.
Some things should be policed. And actually, we do have to police our own community to avoid allowing insanity and incoherent nonsense to take over and spread and drag us all down.
Are you able to let go with how you identify with exclusion to define yourself? Until you are, I'd call you a baby queer. You got a lot of growing to do.
I would not like to be called queer at all. It's a actually political term, not a sexual or gender identity. And it's funny to me how the same people who are such warriors about you must accept my identity, you must affirm my pronouns, have absolutely no problem calling us queer when we don't want to be called that. Now, the main problem I had with the video was not actually the incoherent nonsense take of it all. I expected that once I saw the hair color, the pronouns, the whole shebang. It was the comment section of people affirming and agreeing with this sheer and utter delulu. By the way, guys, I think I may have been the first person to ever say the word delulu on a national cable news broadcast the other day during a Fox hit.
Brad, what's your assessment of that?
The delulu is off the charts with her if she thinks Kamala Harris made no missteps. Back to the comments section here. One person writes, a big reason I prefer using the word queer for myself is because it's ambiguous. I don't feel like I have to fit a certain aesthetic or category or behave in specific ways. I just get to be queer. You realize that you are the problem, right? Like the problem is white straight girls who want to declare themselves queer to be trendy, but not actually have to date women or do anything or transition or do anything. They just want to cash in on the identity, politics, oppression, Olympics points and be part of the cultural trend and fad. And that's why people are rolling their eyes at the community in part and saying like, okay, this has gone too far. This isn't a real thing anymore. This is getting silly. Because if it's just ambiguous and can mean anything, then it also means nothing. Do you guys not get that? Another person comments, I've reached the point where I call myself hot and queer, and that's all that matters to me. I'm going to be honest, I've never met a hot person who calls themselves queer. I'm sure some exist out there, just haven't met one. Another person writes, trans mask, bi, ace, lesbian is the simplest and also most incorrect way to describe my identity, but words don't need to describe my experience. I just need to experience it and be witnessed. What? God, I'm going to miss TikTok when it's gone. Another person says, yes, they're labels, not boxes. My labels are about what I am, not what I'm not. In order for something to be about what you are, it also has to define what you are not. Am I taking crazy pills? Or are they just trying to set our social dictionary on fire? Another person comments, unrelated, but your hair looks great that color. And yeah, I agree. I say this to people all the time. No comment. Guys, queer TikTok gives me brain damage. It honestly does. And they're doing so much harm to this community, to this demographic group of people. And as somebody who's unfortunately lumped in with it all, it's really, really disappointing. And I'll push back on it and do my best. But there's only so much I can do, and so much of this I can stand without incurring brain damage permanently. So I'm going to leave it there for TikTok for today. But do let me know what you think in the comments below. And do hit the like button while you're at it. And now, is California finally waking up? Seriously, is the Golden State actually cracking down on crime? The answer is actually yes. And the downfall of some of these criminals who've been getting away with stealing for so long is absolutely glorious. So the context you need to know is that California voters recently passed something called Proposition 36 by an overwhelming majority, which instituted harsher penalties for things like shoplifting and stealing, when previous ballot initiatives and laws had downplayed them so that they were just misdemeanor offenses under $950 and, frankly, rarely, if ever, punished to the full extent of the law. As a result, shoplifting got out of control in parts of California, and we saw these insane videos of people mass looting stores, and we saw companies leaving the Golden State or leaving certain parts of it in certain cities, which is, of course, what you would expect. But after the ballot initiative and the law being changed, things are changing, at least in some parts of California, and it is a delight to see and a pleasure to watch. Take a listen to some local news coverage.
Operation Ugly Sweater.
The sweater stolen?
Sacramento County Sheriff's deputies in the Organized Retail Theft Unit are undercover this week.
We're watching two businesses
Searching for shoplifters showing up in stores alongside paying shoppers buying gifts for the holidays.
After the passage of Prop 36, we now have the ability with two previous convictions, even if they're misdemeanor convictions, to be able to charge someone with a felony regardless of the dollar amount.
Before Prop 36 went into place Wednesday, suspects arrested for stealing merchandise under $950 only faced a misdemeanor. And it didn't matter how many previous tickets they had, they didn't spend any time in jail and could keep on shoplifting.
Suspects are very open about the fact that they know that theft in the state of California under $950 is a misdemeanor. They have no problem telling us, well, I didn't steal a felony amount. This is day 2 of Prop 36 going into effect.
Now, as deputies prepare for another day of stopping retail theft,
some of them are starting to pick up on the fact that Prop 36 means they're actually going to physically go to jail, so they may try and run a little bit harder.
they have more ammunition to keep repeat offenders out of stores.
Definitely our officers are feeling more empowered. We're feeling like, we're not just, racking up another citation. Our officers feel like what they're doing matters and that they want to do the extra legwork to make sure that we get a good conviction.
Have you been arrested for theft before?
Please let me get a citation. Yes, I have. Please.
How many times?
A few times.
Because she's eligible for Prop 36 if they wanted to take her.
Instead of being released with just a ticket, more shoplifters are now headed off to jail.
This is so based and so amazing to see. Because for years now, California, at least large parts of it, have gone soft on crime in ways that aren't actually smart criminal justice reform. I support things like stop punishing the drug war and other stuff, but actually just allowing violent crime and property crimes to often go unpunished, which is one of the most important things the government exists to do in the first place, is protect us from criminals and protect our property from thieves. And now thieves in some parts of California are actually getting what they deserve and being arrested for stealing, because it is a socially destructive behavior, guys. Despite what TikTok might tell you, stealing is not cute, it is not slay queen, it is not harmless, it is social arsenic. It destroys societal trust, where we end up with these stores with everything behind a freaking glass counter because some people can't help themselves from taking things that don't belong to them. And the costs of what you steal, called shrinkage in the business world, are partially passed on to other consumers in your community. The ones who actually obey the law. And when it gets extreme enough, as it has in parts of California, stores can even be forced to close their doors altogether and move out of an area, depriving people in your community of the stores they rely on and the jobs and income that they need. Stealing is not okay. It's not cute. It's not funny. It is toxic. antisocial behavior, and it should be cracked down upon. And I'm so glad to see that happening in California now. And guys, I have to show you this hilarious video that one police department in California made in Orange County, now that they're able to finally crack down on the shoplifters who've been terrorizing their communities. This video is captioned, "Bitch, New Laws," and it has the song, "These Boots Are Made for Walkin'," attached to it, but of course I might have to mute that for copyright purposes. And the Seal Beach police account wrote that this is one of my mother's favorite songs and a friendly reminder that Proposition 36, which increases punishments for some retail theft and drug possession offenses, went into effect Wednesday morning in California. And this was posted about a week ago. The Seal Beach Police Department explains that this undoes some of the changes voters made with a 2014 ballot measure that turns certain nonviolent felonies into misdemeanors, effectively shortening prison sentences and leading to a spike in retail theft and crime. The post continues, "Here in Seal Beach, we never believed in the cite and release program, but this new proposition only strengthens our commitment to combating organized retail theft. Remember, folks, don't steal in Seal."
That's a felony? Bitch, new laws. Stealing is a felony. And this is Orange County, bitch. They don't play. That's why I asked what county is this. That's where I went to jail last year and got on probation for a year for stealing out of Target.
Guys, I'm often critical of police in this country, and I do support different kinds of criminal justice reform. But this, count me in. I think this is amazing, and everybody involved in this video and in these arrests deserves a raise. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And we'll leave it there for today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Please do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button before you go, and do comment with your thoughts. I do take the time to read the comments, and I'm always very curious to hear what you guys have to say. And with that, we'll talk again tomorrow.